Welcome everyone to Cerulean Arts for the current set of collective exhibitions, which features the work of Laurence Bach, Sandra Benhaim, Kathleen Craig, Nancy Halbert, and Alice Lesnick. So we're going to tour through the shows and the artists will speak about their work. The show itself is up through May 29th, so you're welcome to come and see it. We're open Wednesday through Friday, 10 to 6, Saturday, Sunday, noon to 6. And you can also see everything on our website. So I'll put a link into the chat as we go. So I'm going to spotlight Tina's camera and head into the gallery. And the first artist we're going to visit is Alice Lesnick. Hello, Alice.
Hello, Mike. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us. And also just like big thanks to you, Mike and Tina, for this beautiful show and how wonderful to be here with other artists. And thanks to all who are here. So, partly I paint so that I don't talk. So this is a moment for that change. But I guess I'll just start by saying that I'm really interested in change. I'm interested in how one thing changes to the next. I feel a strong drive to participate in positive change in myself, in the world. And I'm interested in turning things into other things. I'm really inspired a lot in my painting and my work by the work of poet and philosopher Adrienne Rich, who said we must use what we have to invent what we desire. So I think in some of the paintings you'll see what we have, and in some of the paintings you might see, and some of what we have is crying out for change. Like here, this middle painting is in connection with war, and the paintings around it that Tina sort of framed it with are also of what we have, but natural, joyful life, play that is in this world too. So yeah, I think I'm painting to explore what I know and what I don't know, and some of the inner images and memories that I've never framed as images or as words. And there's an interplay among all of those while I'm working. This series of watercolors came about last year, and I think they're pretty heavily inspired by my avid study of Qigong, which is, if you don't know, sort of movement branch of traditional Chinese medicine, and interested in how as human beings we live between heaven and earth. So there's a sort of a strong embodiment of upward and downward movement or energy. And I think in a lot of these paintings too, I'm trying to get clearer on what is seen sort of above the ground and what may be beneath the ground. Like we talk a lot about being grounded, which I think is often actually has some limitations. I think sometimes we might want to be elevated or we might want to be levitated a little bit. But anyway, strengthening my apprehension of what's beneath the ground, sort of literally, is an interest that led me into some of this watercolor painting. And I also am just filled with renewed appreciation for my husband and my daughter who helped with the framing of these, which taught me a lot about the difference between framing and painting, a great difference. So yeah, sometimes, and dance, so movement and dance is present in Qigong. There are sort of very simple movements, but within them, you might see an entire Virginia reel or a complete ballet. Yeah. And then, yeah, here on this wall, this is also the group of four I call Hanky Alchemy. I'm really interested in, like I said, sort of how to turn a sow's ear into a silk purse or shit into shinola. But in this case, it's my grandmother's handkerchiefs that are there on what were older paintings, and then a process of working across the cloth and acrylic. I really deeply love that acrylic is also glue. And I think that suggests something too about how we make changes by sticking things together that weren't originally together. I think that's actually a powerful way of making change in our world. And I'm also interested in power of various kinds. I think these paintings suggest an interest in feminine power, not necessarily just the province of women or people who identify as women. And unity, but not unity that comes cheap. Unity through some sort of process of sort of funky composure, I guess I'll say. And yeah, also a question of sort of what's kept, what's held on to, what's inherited, and how to work with those things so as to lose maybe what needs to be lost and transform what needs to be transformed.
Alice, was it a difficult decision to use the handkerchiefs this way, or had you been holding on to them for a long time?
Yeah, it was, yes, I had been holding on to them for quite a while, together with some of my grandma's old cotton gloves. And I did feel I had a pile of them in the studio, and I sort of saw myself going to them, and I thought, is this a good idea? You know, is this like irreverent or disrespectful to mess with these things? But I really was very blessed in my grandmother. I think that it would be hard for me to do something that she wouldn't find a way to accept and celebrate. So that gave me some comfort and some courage. Yeah, and then I guess there are some paintings that suggest stillness. So, you know, in the sort of the polarities of movement, dance, reaching, and then stillness or contemplation. And again, the way that those things, you know, teach us.
So Alice, are you working like directly from the blank canvas here, or do you, like, how do you approach your painting?
Oh, it varies. So like sometimes from the blank canvas, and not seldom with an aim in mind visually from the outset, but sometimes with a single sort of gesture in mind, or sometimes a question, not fully articulated, but a sort of inquiry. And then sometimes starting and then like making that the problem set that I then have to fuss and vex and trouble through. So this painting came after what's underneath it sat for quite a while saying, ha ha ha, you know, catch me if you can, or like, see how you get out of this one. So there is a kind of like, you know, problem solving or call and response or something. So yeah, and I like so much how making paintings is a way of messing with linear time. So Yeah. And the first person who taught me to paint is a friend, E. Katney is also a painter. And she said, it's really important to keep yourself from hurrying through the act of painting. Even if you want to work quickly and make a quick stroke, don't hurry through. And I think that stayed very much with me.
I mean, your work looks very immediate. But is it an illusion?
Sometimes. Yeah, but there's a lot of variety. Sometimes it's immediate, but like this painting started this way, but it came after 2 or 3 others that sort of teed it up. And you're not seeing those. And similar with this one, the second one, sometimes I imagine a lot of people have this experience. In painting this, it's like I could recognize something that I somehow knew without having seen it, about boundaries and edges of things, a little bit about upholstery. But this one was more slow and a little more labored, and also in connection with trying to sort of like get with war.
And you're also, I mean, you're a professor, yes.
I'm a professor of education.
Education. So how do the two like sides relate? Do they feed each other?
They do. Yeah, so I'm really always interested in teaching and learning wherever they happen. And schooling is only one site for that. And I guess my interest in education is mostly in what it could be, not what it usually is or has been or what people think it has to be. And I think doing this kind of emergent, intuitive painting informs the way I think about how people in facilitating the learning of others can draw on so many sources and well springs of leadership, and not those that are codified only. So it's sort of like I often tell my students, I mean, our education system, the whole idea of organizing people in schools is so relatively new in human history or history of life. We're just at the beginning. So I like to be at the beginning of things. Yeah.
I mean, education can be a very like linear, sort of stratified area. So does painting give you a release from that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I teach into and against that stratification and that those hierarchies and those conventions. And I always have, but I think painting and also sharing it, like finding that it's another way to consider things with people, has given me more experience working outside of, because it is true, some of us who go into education did that because we kind of like were good at school. So sometimes when you do that, you can't see it from other angles. And I appreciate it. I can see it from this angle.
That's great. Thanks, Alice.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful show. We're happy to have it.
Thank you so much.
So the next artist we're going to visit is Laurence Bach. But unfortunately, Laurence, he goes by Larry, can't be here with us tonight. He's also had a surgery, so he's recovering from that. So he did give me a statement to read. So his work is all photography. And so he writes, as many of you know, I have had the opportunity to show recent work here at Cerulean Arts for the past few years. There was the Vase series, the Circle series, and then the Midnight series on canvas. All were recent expressions of my vision through the medium. So that's getting some feedback. Hang on. Okay, so let's see, where was I? There was a Vase series, a Circle series, and then the Midnight series on canvas. All were recent expressions of my vision through the medium of photography and of course, Photoshop and color. When I proposed a mini retrospective to Tina and Mike, they agreed it would be an interesting puzzle piece to the more recent work. So all this work does represent a retrospective of Larry starting from the 70s. The early work from 1972 out of graduate school in Basel focuses on nature forms, simplicity, surrealism, and design. Clearly that thread flows through the next 40 plus years. Storytelling is especially evident in the Paros Dream Book written by Robert Goulrick. The importance of these images is not only the black and white traditional photographic methodology, but the multiple exposures to 4x5 film, sometimes during the day and again at night, and the use of a meter by meter square glass table, as well as another meter by meter square of mirror. Whew. Both opened a wealth of visual impossibilities. This layering allowed for a magic act of floating objects and impossible perspectives. Hours in the dark room, printing multiple negatives and dozens of large-scale film exposures made the pre-Photoshop experience tedious but amazing. To add to the story, all images were made on the Greek island of Paros, where I had no electricity or running water. I used a charged car battery connected to my enlarger to print contact sheets, as well as sketches, and water from the well outside to create chemicals for printing and processing film. Romantic for sure, but a challenge of obstacles. Nonetheless, the love of light, archaeology, found objects, lost written notes, and simple design carry the ideas to fruition into the present. The concerns remain the same. The medium of photography, either traditional or digital, are merely interesting anecdotes toward the creation of ideas. So we're happy to have Larry's retrospective here and hope that he makes a quick recovery. So next we're going to visit with Sandra Benhaim. Hello, Sandra.
I think I'm unmuted now. Hello.
Yes.
Hi, Mike and Tina. I want to thank you very much, both of you, for doing a wonderful job of the presentation. I think it really, wonderful presentation to enhance my artwork. And I want to thank all the people who are in attendance here by Zoom tonight. The first piece that you're looking at, if I jump right to it, this is a collage, many different elements. It's what is known as an analog collage, which at first I didn't realize there was such a category distinction. It was actually designated, but a digital collage is one that uses computer tools to create the collage and also transform some of the elements using electronic media. And commonly some of those elements are that are used are things like Photoshop. But this particular one and all the collages that you'll see in my exhibition are what are known as analog collages, not using any kind of digital media in any way. Mainly a lot of found papers and hand-colored papers as well. The next work that you're seeing is a painting on paper. This one is titled Willingly Given. It might, maybe some people recognize, may look a little bit like a gift of some kind. Just to back up, I worked representationally for many years, and then about 20 years or so ago, I started working abstractly, and I find it very challenging, but also very rewarding. And it kind of, in the sense that an artist I know who I respect said about abstract work, an eye that is not told what to see sees more. And I think that is a lot of what abstract, for instance, these two collages, both kind of predominantly red. This is a mixed media painting using oil and pigment sticks, and I think also some oil pastels. If you were to see it in person, it has many, many layers and kind of highly textured. And the pigment sticks, which are kind of like oil paint in a tube, similar to that, with an element of wax. And the consistency, it's in the form, almost looks like a tube of lipstick, and that kind of consistency.
Sandra, were you trained as a representational artist?
Oh, yes. I attended, and I have a bachelor's and a master's degree from Tyler School of Art. And I also was in a program at PAFA, as well as taking a number of classes at continuing ed and so on at PAFA. I studied a little bit with Gilbert Lewis. And so I have that all under my belt, and none of that was abstract. It was all kind of classical and representational and so on. So
what prompted the shift to abstract?
I took a kind of a class workshop that was, I think, first at Mainline Arts Center with Mo Brooker. And that's what did it. Kind of, at his suggestion to kind of just try be a little freer. This is a collage, a mixed media collage that kind of combines both. I mean, there's part of it is a painting, part of a painting of mine that I repurposed, and a magazine image. This one also has some hand-painted papers, mulberry paper, magazine images, words. This collage has some paint chips, sample paint chips or cards that you would get at the paint store. And one of them was called Golden Flame, and that's where I got the title from. This is one of my favorites. I may want to just keep it eventually for myself, because it just seemed to kind of come together. And it was a lot of, it was for the color green, but with that little pop of the red postage stamp, which was in honor of the artist Ellsworth Kelly. So I titled it My Greens and Ellsworth's Reds. And some of the greens are, one of them was the inner part of an envelope, just that you might find in the mail.
So this format is new for you, yes? This small format, yes. This was in response to and for an exhibition called the Rainbow Show, which had been held at both Da Vinci Art Alliance and then later at the Cheltenham Art Center. And it was as a result of a prompt through a new group called the Philadelphia Collage Works. So we each did a few collages in every color of the rainbow. This is a purely just using all oil pastels, which are kind of a combination between the colors, the beautiful colors of pastels, but then there's an oily, almost like a oil paint kind of consistency. But the colors are wonderful, at least in the Sennelier brand. So you like to experiment with materials, yes?
Oh, yes, yes. It's, yeah. And especially
like paint and collage and pastel and watercolor. So how do you decide what to use at any particular moment?
Well, the large works, like this painting, I mean, would not be, I'd have to have really gigantic watercolor paper. And so the larger works, definitely for oils and the paint, the pigment sticks, I mean, you can just use them directly on the canvas. You don't even need a brush, but they just, the consistency allows them, allows you to just freely use them as a whole gesture. And the RNF, you know, it's not a plug. The colors are just very luscious and vibrant. So
is that a brand name, RNF?
RNF, yes. It stands for the guy who developed them. I think it's Richard Frumer. But yeah, they're just luscious. And there is some paint, and this one also has some oil pastel as well. So they're all kind of compatible. And I really only learned of at least the oil pastels and the pigment sticks through the classes and then, you know, mentoring with Mo Brooker, the late Mo Brooker. It's hard to believe that he's not here.
Yes, it's
a terrible loss to the art community. These are two more collages. I really like blue, so I guess that kind of shows in the blue and and this one, this purple was just, it's completely from magazine pages.
So do you work on like multiple projects at the same time, or one after the other?
I try to do several at one time, because I find it, you know, one will help another. And, you know, and also one way of working on the collages kind of sometimes helps me solve questions that I have in the other media works. This is a mixed media, a lot of also Caran d'Ache artist crayons. I love them. So I have some that are just so small, little bits, and I have to replace them. But this is also has some acrylic, some color pencil, I think, but a lot of Caran d'Ache, which they're water soluble, but they're also great for on the arches cold pressed paper. They pick up the texture of the paper, and that's what you might see at the lower left, that the crayon just glides over the surface, and you get the texture of the paper really coming through.
So this one's called Florid 2?
Right. This was, I did 3.
So what does what's, and it's in parentheses, silver lining?
Well, when I looked at it, and I hadn't figured a title, but it was one of 3 that, you know, have a lot of red and kind of maybe reminiscent of floral things. But at the top, the part that I left blue, which was from kind of an underpainting of it, and it, you know, under some of the layers, I left that part, and it kind of reminded me of a cloud, but there's a silver lining from a lot of times through all the clouds. Otherwise, the painting is so mainly in reds, but that one little, that blue area kind of, I just left it remaining. These are 3 more very recent collages. The top one, I called it Balancing Act, and that one is completely made from letters that and parts of letters that I saw in magazines, I think completely in magazines, and then I just cut them and reconfigured. So it's not a word of any kind. The letters are just kind of balancing on top of each other. The next one is titled Dots, and that one, besides the postage stamp, it mainly is from liners of envelopes. When you open a lot of envelopes, especially you know, bills and other things, and you see in some of these, the green one was very unusual to find that, especially that color and the large circles. And then the third one, the collage, is if you look closely at the 2 lower stamps, postage stamps, they each have a cyclist, a bicyclist. So I titled it 2 Cyclists. And then there's some other, a lot of things. I save envelopes like crazy, the inside of envelopes. Much of that collage work is envelopes. And these, there are 2 small collages on the left. My favorite color, blue, I guess. And the top one, if you look closely, kind of towards the bottom middle, you'll see the little silver bear. And I thought that wave was too big for that bear, so that's where the title of that one came from. Too big a wave for that bear. And then this one is titled Pegasus. And if you look, you see at the top a magazine image of Pegasus, the constellation Pegasus. And then there's just loads of other papers, some hand painted, some found. And then this, I think this painting is urban, it's titled Urban Dynamics. And I think this painting came about after I had done a series of works on paper called Listening to Jazz. And from working on those works on paper, they were a lot about the brush stroke and the gesture of the brush stroke. And I think that's what I was thinking about subconsciously when I worked on this painting. And I just kept organizing different brush strokes and the gesture of those. And also then, besides that, I started thinking about the reversing of the colors, having the warm colors recede and the blue and green brush strokes come forward. And my challenge was how to get that to come off, to work. And I think these are the last two collages in the exhibition. The one on the left is Inspiration Pantone Radiant Orchid. And that you can see the Pantone and a little bit of the Radiant Orchid color, which was the color of the year that Pantone designated in 2014. And then the collage on the right is a collage in purple. And I used, it's mainly many of my hand painted papers that were torn up, cut up and repurposed for this collage.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you very much. And again, thanks to all the attendees tonight. And it's wonderful to see the work of all the artists tonight.
So next we're going to visit Kathleen Craig. Kathy?
Okay, is my computer not making weird noises anymore?
Yeah, the feedback is gone.
Great. So this is the first time I've exhibited collages at Cerulean, and in fact, the first time I've been in a show that I used collage, and I've been painting doing oil paints for 30 years or so, and I only started playing around with collage maybe 10 years ago, inspired, as we were saying before we started, by a piece by the artist Ken Cooley, who wrote a wonderful essay about color. And I reread it every now and then, but he wrote the essay referring to collages as his examples for the most part. And even the paintings that he showed were very collage-like. And I just started doing it because it was fun. And then I began to appreciate how much it was helping me with my oil painting. First, because that one that Tina's showing right now is one of the oldest I did. And when I first started doing it, it was humbling, shall I say, to realize that my collages were a lot better than my paintings. And I wrote to a Catherine Kehoe, actually, who I had heard of as a good teacher, and asked, and she does sort of blocky paint work. And I asked her, why is this collage okay, and the painting that I tried to make of the same subject is god awful? And I don't remember her answer, but it was a good answer, and led me to understand, about how crisp you have to make those color relationships. I don't mean just with straight lines, but I think how the straight lines when you're cutting stuff lend themselves to crisp differences and relationships. And also about the same time, I was trying to transition to make a transition to much less realistic painting. I felt I'd gone as far as I felt like going with realism. And I had no idea how to do it, but collage kind of lends itself to that. Unless you want to be extremely careful and detailed, it's just hard. You can't cut out a face or a flower exactly as you would if you were trying to draw it with in great detail. So you're just sort of forced to accept approximations of what you're aiming at, even if you're aiming at something relatively recognizable, like this old guy in the rocking chair, or whatever kind of chair it is. I wanted to put rockers on. And I was listening to Sandra just now talking about painting her papers, and it occurred to me that the other thing that both makes collage work so fun and helps me understand things about my oil painting is that the color, you can paint papers, you can use just papers that look beautiful to you because you like the color. Again, this is about color. But then you just have to pick one out of a box and use it. You don't mess around on the palette trying to get exactly the right thing in advance. You just get to slap something down, and they're all colors that you think are beautiful because you thought they were beautiful when you chose them or when you painted them or whatever. You just pleased yourself and your sense of color rather than trying to fit either something you're looking at or some preconceived notion. Put a yellow next to a purple or some whatever, theoretic combination you're trying to make. So that's why collage. I guess this is what I have to say is really all about the benefits of collage and the benefit it is still being to my oil paintings. You can make changes like super fast, right? You don't like a paper you put down, you pull it up and stick another one down. And I make changes a whole lot. Every day I get to the end of the day, and if the painting is not resolved, and I say, okay, I'll work on it tomorrow, and I go down the next day, and what I'm looking at suggests a completely different painting, and I'm starting over again. And this can lead to a really vicious cycle where every day, if you haven't resolved the thing in one day, if I haven't resolved the thing in one day, I go back and I start something that winds up being quite different, but it isn't resolved at the end of the day. And you can go on for months with the same painting like that. And the result is either you're in some sort of endless cycle, or in my case, very often I have an overworked, stiff piece because I kept trying to force myself into the same ideas I had yesterday. So I just have a very short attention span. And I now know, even when painting, what I need to do is get it resolved in one day, or if I resolved it and I don't like what it looks like, turn it to the wall and leave it alone for 6 months or a year and then see what I think, because it might actually be okay. And I just thought it wasn't resolved. Whereas collages, they're a lot of fun to do, and you get stuck into it, and before you know it, you're done. And sometimes they just don't take very long. And that's nice too, is you can actually produce.
So, Kathy, where do
why collages?
Kathy, where do your subjects come from?
Kind of where I am. I mean, where I am, well, physically, really. I lived in the country in Central Virginia for a long time, so I saw a lot of cows, and I had a really large but very scrappy garden of native plants. So I had plants and cows. That was kind of it. And I do still lifes a lot. So I set up still lifes. But that's what you're focused on right now is called green cow. Oh yeah, and there's a brown cow next to it. Yeah, so I'm almost forced to think about where I am, if it's just in my studio or sometimes, I'm inspired by some other painter or something that I see online or in a museum or something, but usually it's just, I can't seem to get away from the stuff I'm looking at, even if I'm not looking at it.
So are you working from memory or drawings or photos?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, I love to draw, but I only actually draw when I've got something that's holding still in the studio.
Do these start out as drawings, or do you just start with paper cut?
Kind of all of the above. By the time I got involved with trying to use other things than just gluing paper, like the one of that lady, I hope she looks like a lady, was one I did or got at least partway done last summer. I did a workshop, online workshop at Black Pond, and she had us, she was very loose about what you were supposed to do, but I thought I'd go ahead and try doing some other media involved, mixed media, I guess, and painting our own papers, which I'd never done before, and being, so there's no particular way to start. This one was that one happened to be an old oil painting, I think. And I also learned, you can stick, water soluble glue on top of oil. You just have to really roughen the oil and sand it, so it's got lots of nice cracks and things that something will stick to. So some of these are on panels and some of them are started. I try to do acrylic gouache. I use a lot because it's very beautiful color, nice and solid. I'm not very experienced with transparency, so I like the solid color and it's brilliant. And you use it on paper, and then I try to paint something and be awful, but I could use that as a basis and then get going with the glue. And I wound up, I got very brave and actually used corrugated cardboard. For me, that was a big step, and that was fun to see how well it could work. It could, be a wharf or rocks or sails on a sailboat. I think that sailboat one I thought was going to be a fruit dish, and somebody in the workshop said, that looks like a ship. So I decided, okay, that sounds great. Much more interesting than a fruit bowl.
When it became, you titled it Vikings.
Yeah. I'm not sure at the time, which was a while back in the painting, that it looked kind of different, but to me, it said Viking ship. And I have no idea what their sails looked like. I'm sure I've seen pictures of them, but I don't remember. But I know there are sails that are sort of square on old ships. I think collaging with, especially if you start painting your own papers, it's just out of this world fun. The papers, you can do anything. And so I'm using some children's sort of watercolor paint sticks, because they really are like crayons. They're smushy like oil sticks or oil pastels or but it's watercolor. And you can, cover it with medium or something, and so that it's a little more permanent, but you can draw, You can draw with them and squiggle with them. It's fun to make papers with those things and change the colors. And
it's great. Fantastic.
I don't know if it's great, but it's a lot of fun. Highly recommend it.
It's a great show. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
So next up is Nancy Halbert. Hello, Nancy.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
These pastels were done in a workshop with Timothy Hawksworth in Norristown, and he has two models in his building, Norristown Arts Building, and you go for the day. And it's a wonderful environment. If everyone hasn't heard of it, the drawing workshops by him, you should take a look. So these are pastels on colored paper. These are soft pastels. And the models are separated. There's a male and female, but I put them, the last couple of times I went, I put them together. I mean, you have to understand that one is on one end and one is at the other end of a stand, model stand. And I just needed them to, to be relating to one another more. And so I also tend to busy up a painting. So there was something that told me to stop. There was some sort of alarm bell that went on, maybe because they said launch, I don't know, but I was like, how can I keep some of the negative space as relevant as the motion itself? The first one that you saw around the bend was called couples therapy, and this is the mate to that one. I got on this kick about my humor comes out in my titles, and I just decided that through COVID, I just did this one, and we were like, everyone was talking about how they need couple therapy for living at home with their mates or partners. And so that's what they became about. So it's couples therapy 1 and 2. And it also is a show of strength, who's pulling who along, the female or the male. And the next one is City Dwellers. And I really had fun with that. And I see all sorts of, when you look at it from a distance, and so I teach soft pastel painting, there's always something, when you look at it close up, I'm sorry, thank you, Tina. There's a lot of elements and a lot of motion, and a lot of movement, and a lot of little lights and darks, and you don't quite know what it is. And as a distance, it becomes a whole. It becomes a complete painting that could be multiple different paintings. Like just now, for the first time I saw a leg, and I didn't know I've seen that before. So every time I see these or work with them, I try to think of different, I think they just look different every single time I see them. To me, I'll see another image pop out from moving with spontaneity, which is what I really love to do. And then that painting is along a landscape in oils with some charcoal or pastels involved in them. I weave the soft pastels with charcoal. And the first one, the titles come to me afterwards and sort of about the moodiness of the day I had. Like, what mood am I in? And it feels like, I don't know if that's true for the others, because Sandra was talking about titles, and, titles can be fun, or they could be like Jackson Pollock, Untitled number 11, so, but this was about the earth and the changing earth. And I think I called it Please Forgive Me, or something like that, like a very humanist kind of title, when it's, rather than like the lake, the river, you know, in Mexico or something. It's more about, Can You Forgive Me was the title, because it's also about us humans taking up the earth and not treating it very well. So these are all new. These are all paintings I did to get ready for the show when I booked it last July. And they were all under the condition of me rehealing from my third back surgery. My back surgery took place last August 4th. Tina and I agreed to this date in May, and I said, well, I'm going to be fine, but I was in a severe amount of pain painting these paintings. So until I had this surgery. So to hopefully relieve what that problem was. This is Diver, and he's a diver. He came out of me within like 2 hours. And I had a picture of a model in this position or whatever. And I just can't swim right now. I couldn't swim. I couldn't get in the pool. I couldn't do anything because I was recovering for that surgery. But I love to swim. So we looked up, I just looked at him one day and said, oh God, he's diving into a little pool of a baby pool of water. Like how funny is that? So and I can't swim. So a lot of this was based on, I can't, these paintings. I can't, you'll see along. It was my mental, it was not a great mental health year, but I had the painting and the deadline for Cerulean Arts to complete a body of work I could be proud of. And that really pushed me to do well. And some things came out really fast. And some things, that's his face below his arm. And some things came out really fast and some things just dragged on. And I'll tell you which ones those were. And you'll probably be able to tell the difference as a viewer. I do like, obviously, working where you can tell what the objects are, but I also like the looseness where the paint is drippy and gesso. I love gesso. Who doesn't? Who doesn't? Raise their hand. If you don't know gesso, please get to know it. Wish I had stock in it, but I just if something didn't work, I just re-gessoed it. I personally didn't wait 6 months to fix something. I just got the gesso out. So this is in the Catskills. My husband finally got away with me for one weekend, and it was snowing, and I didn't think I could walk on the ice, and we couldn't walk anywhere. It's beautiful. The snow drips in the Catskill Mountains, and I just thought, wow, that one in the contrast to the river just really the first landscape really says so much about cold and warm, colors and the cold that I was feeling, that I didn't have confidence in the way that I strut, in the way that I typically move. It's I've slowed down because of all this. The first one in that, okay, let's look at the walls. Very beautifully hung. Thank you. It's really, wow. I'm grateful, Tina, and it's just really came out great. That wall particularly. She was all I had been working on. I changed her. She was all this confetti colors. If you get in really close, you could see she was full of confetti, and it was a little silly looking how much confetti was all you threw confetti at her. And it's called Garden Gate. And I changed it. I had a show at Abington Art Center in the fall, and she was all full of confetti, and I brought her home. I go, well, I don't feel like that anymore. I'm not that happy. I'm not healed. So I changed her, and I flattened some of that out into just big strokes. And the shoes, she's a copy. I have a book of Klimt drawings, and she was a model in his studio, Gustav Klimt. And she was posing nude with these boots. And I pretty much stole the pose. I didn't have a pose like that from a model, so I stole her. young girl, you know, you can picture her very looking at the artist at Klimt. And she eventually probably went on to be a painting. I'm not really sure of his, but I made it a gray sky to like a more of a, you know, what kind of day is it going to be in the garden? So it's everything was in question for me this last year, and mainly around my spine, which is, you know, it's what makes you move. It's very important to you. To one. These two didn't know that they were going to be mates. They met online. They met where I just did one and then I did another. And then I was like, oh my God, you two are meant to be. I was like a matchmaker. And I said, you are supposed to be in the, you know, in each other's paintings. And so I fiddle-faddled a little bit with some of the space, the emptiness of her, and my no face kind of feeling that I usually do. I don't put a lot of details in faces, but that's definitely spine going on. That's at the back of my feeling, the back of my body more than my front. And then when I did him, it just was ironic that I used the same colors, that he was rolling over into someone or something. And turns out they became partners. My paint's pretty thick there. I charcoal, I draw, paint, I draw into paint. That's what I do. I draw into paint. I draw with paint, in and around paint. And it's just a signature thing that I personally love, being in that kind of group of artists who use pencil on oils, use charcoal, use, you know, whatever, soft pastels. And then I spray the soft pastels with a fixative so they don't ever fall off these are all on canvas. So don't they, I mean, to you, they look like, oh, wow, they are in the same room, but they're not really. It's a little COVID again, COVID related. Can't be with someone, there's a space 6 feet apart. She's the moment I awoke, and this is really self-focused, this body of work, because this was what I felt like when I had to get up out of bed in August 4th. I had to have surgery, and so she came out of me. Oh, I guess by October I was probably painting again, and she just came out like. And I don't even know, truthfully, tell you how I did that gray area where Tina is right now with the lines. And I took a sponge with black gesso and mark making. And I don't even know how I got some of these strokes. The black is black gesso, not black paint. And I use that a lot in a lot of my paintings. And there's some signage going on. You can really look for clues, but I don't do it deliberately. It just sort of comes out after I sit down and go, I laugh and go, oh, look at that. There's, you know, something. She's carrying a pillow around. I don't know. It's just all made up in my head, my own imagination, but highly figurative. Really this time around was really focusing on positive negative space and how to make way for clarity without busying them all up all the time. And I love the colors of I'm not sure how to say this, orange, Pyrenean orange, something like that. And it's a beautiful color of orange. And then this wall, I told Mike, reminded me sometimes like when you put the big one in the middle and the other two on the sides, that it's like signs of the Holy Cross or something, like Byzantine art. But it really does break, it's nice. It really does break up the busyness of the one in the middle, which I had so much fun painting. I just really had fun because that one is called Save the Last Dance for Me. And I just knew I wanted to dance again, but I could just have fun dancing, go dance in your living room kind of dancing. But I've been limited. I've been limited with how much I can do physically. And there's a relationship to them. If you look at their faces, they're not really looking at each other. They're just doing their own disco. They're just doing their own thing, and they're not relating. And I love doing couples. They've been highly successful, the ones that I've done, and I've sold several. And I think a male and a female, or partners, two females, anything is like really a really nice way to present my life to people. If they want to know more about me, yes, you know, I'm married. Yes, I have a very solid marriage of 35 years, and my family has done everything in their power to help me get through this last year, and again with this surgery this year. So I think that I needed to show that somehow, that how much my husband means to me through paint. And even though we, you know, obviously yell or whatever all the time, bicker as couples do. This one is really interesting to me because these are very thick canvases. These are depth-wise. These are like 3-inch canvases. And these are the last of the ones. I got them from a friend who didn't want to deal with them because they were too thick and they weren't gessoed correctly. And I said, I'll take them. And this was just really about mark making and finding a place of like summer fun. Like it's called Spring Forward. But and the imagery, you can't really see, it's a sense of abstraction, but I still feel like, as someone else had said tonight, like there's still a sense of place. And my yard is my place. I may have 1.5 acres. We call it the healing house, my house. We've had multiple problems here with different family members who've come to stay. And my house being 1.5 acres, is just in bloom now. And it's just, we moved here 4 years ago, and it's so lovely to have my own studio in my home, spacious. And I think that's me just being, you know, sharing with you. That painting is just, let's get going and have spring. I just painted that before with all that terrible weather, like back in February, March, and the weather was so awful. I needed a taste of spring. I repainted that one. And then the final one is my political statement on climate change. This was a total mistake for any of you who paint with different, so many of you like do cross mediums and mixed media and know what to glue with and not to use. So I just ended up painting by mistake a house. I use house paint often, and I painted house paint over latex over oil. And the oil, as you could see, is the yellow ochres at the bottom. And I said, oh my God, I made a mistake. This is all gonna peel off, and how can I fix it? And I said, I gotta start sanding. And my daughter came over and we just started sanding this, like, and this is what we got from sanding. And she does jewelry, and she makes jewelry. And she says, I think you should stop. I think this is really cool. I don't think you should do another thing to it. And it has these beautiful passes of color and whites that aren't white. And it just became out of luck. I mean, it was just out of luck that it started peeling, and we sealed it, and then it rang true to me calling it snow, wind, and climate change. So I loved doing that. And if I would do it again on purpose, it would probably never look as good as it does with something that was an accident, a happy accident, as I like to call them. I think that's my life, a happy accident, happy accident. And there you have it.
Thanks, Nancy.
Oh, thank you.
Any questions for Nancy or any of the others before we end? All right, well, if not, we'll finish here. Thank you to the artists for your great talk tonight. And thanks so much to everyone for coming. The show is up again through May 29th. Hope you can check it out. And hope you have a great night.
Thank you, Tim and Tina.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. And Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.